Doc on the Run. We help injured runners run.
Can I run my race if I have a partial rupture of the plantar fascia? Well, that's a question I've gotten a number of times from runners who've been to the doctor. They thought they had plantar fasciitis. They were told they had a partial rupture or a tear in the plantar fascia, and then they want to know if they can do their race. So in this session, we're going to explain how you can decide whether or not you really can or should run when you have a partial rupture in the plantar fascia. So again, the plantar fascia is just a huge sheet of collagen. It's the largest ligament in your foot, but it's a big sheet of collagen that starts at the heel, goes all across the bottom of your foot, and attaches to the toes. Now, in a house, the fascia is just a covering along the roof line, but the fascia is not just a covering in the foot. It's a structural element. So you have to realize that if you tore it, you stressed it enough to actually rip it. So something went wrong. Either you landed wrong, you stepped on something wrong, you severely pronated your foot while you were running. Something applied enough force to that fascia to actually tear it. So that's not really complicated. If you do the same thing that you did to injure it, it's probably going to get worse. Now granted, most people don't really get a tear in the plantar fascia from just a long run or one speed session. It's usually they're doing something, suddenly changing direction where it forcibly pronates the foot, really applies a lot of stress to the fascia, and it rips. So, if you're suddenly running downhill and you land on a trail like at a really sharp angle and it pronates your foot under a lot of force and it's already inflamed, it's already a little bit damaged because you're ignoring your plantar fasciitis, then maybe it could rip then. So obviously you don't want to do that again, but that doesn't mean you can't run with it. Now, whether or not you should run with plantar fasciitis, I really think about it two ways. So the short answer is no, you shouldn't run. That's what every doctor is going to tell you. The reason they tell you that is they want you to heal. So if you tear the plantar fascia and you keep running on it, it's not going to heal. But what I think about, because I only work with runners, is I think about, okay, well, what are the consequences of that? Because nothing's free in medicine. So if you don't run, you're going to pay for something. You're going to lose all your fitness. You're going to get weaker. You're going to get stiffer. You're going to get totally bummed out because you're not running. And your friends aren't going to want to hang out with you because you're going to be a miserable person. So you always have to give something up whenever you do something that a doctor tells you to do. So the way to think about it is like, okay, how important is the race and how important is it to get it to heal? So, and are you really at risk of doing something to really permanently damage it? Like for example, if you have a tear in your Achilles tendon, it's a partial tear, and you go do a 100-mile trail race, there's a really good chance you're going to rupture your Achilles tendon and you're never going to be the same. We're never going to be able to really fix it in a way that you're going to be the same again. So in that case, no way should you do that. Now, the partial rupture of the plantar fascia is a little different. So when we do surgery on the plantar fascia, we actually cut the plantar fascia. So if you tear the plantar fascia, well, basically it's like the surgery for free. In fact, I saw a guy one time as a patient, and what he actually said was, he said, okay, look, I'm just going to be straight with you, doc. So I actually watched this YouTube video, and the guy said that if you have chronic plantar fasciitis, what you should do is go to the doctor, tell them to inject it to make it feel better. They inject corticosteroids. The steroids weaken the collagen. And then after you let that marinate for a few days, you go out to the football field and do wind sprints, running up and down the field, rapidly changing direction as fast as you can, applying as much force as you can so you rip the fascia, so you basically get the surgery for free. Okay, just to be clear, if I told you to do that, if your doctor told you to do it, that'd be malpractice. That's crazy. So it's interesting that some trainer put up a video that said you should do that, but that's nuts. You definitely shouldn't do that. Indiscriminately ripping anything is not a good idea. So you don't want to do that. But the main point of this is that the end result is that when the fascia is completely torn or we cut it in surgery or whatever, we kind of do that as a normal treatment. So if your fascia is partially torn, it's not the end of the world. The way I think about it is it going to make you worse, like permanently worse? Is it really going to disrupt your running in the future if you run on it and make it a little bit worse? So the truth is not really. What I mean by that is that 100% of the time, I've had one specific treatment that has worked to heal partial ruptures in the plantar fascia. So it's an inconvenient routine. I'm not going to go into it here, but it'll work. You have to use some crutches for a little while, you have to use a boot for a little while, but it always works consistently. And no, you don't have to do any fancy injections like PRP or any of that. So, yeah, you could do platelet-rich plasma injections for a partial rupture of the plantar fascia, but I don't normally do it because I can always get patients to heal with this standard routine that I always do. That's what I teach to physicians when I go to medical conferences. Now, the other important thing that I teach to doctors when I go to conferences is like, look, you have to sit down with your patients. You have to say, what is your goal? Do you really want to do this race? Like, have you been training for a year for the Western States 100? Well, if you've been training for the Western States 100 and you have a partial rupture in your plantar fascia, do you want to try to get in again? I mean, it's difficult to get into that race. If you finally got into Ironman Hawaii after 10 years of trying, do you want to skip Ironman Hawaii? I bet probably not. So then you have to decide, okay, can you tune out the pain enough to make it through the race? And can you do the race and not really make it worse? The truth is that most of the time, if you have a partial rupture of the plantar fascia and you run on it, yes, it's going to hurt. It's not going to feel great, but you're already used to that. You've been running on it anyway. And if you can make it through your race, you can still heal it later. I actually had one runner, and she was tough as nails, but she ran for a year and a half on a partial rupture of the plantar fascia. And then when she was finally done with this whole series of long trail races she was doing, she did the routine that I gave her, and it actually healed her plantar fascia. So in that respect, you could say, yes, you could run on a partial rupture of the plantar fascia. You just have to realize it's not going to go away. So it's very difficult to get the plantar fascia, if it's a really bad partial rupture, to really and truly heal. Now, the other thing to talk about, though, is that there's a range of trouble. It's not just like a huge rip where the thing's completely separated. It's almost never completely separated. It's a partial rupture. If it's a big partial rupture, it's very difficult to get that to heal while you're still running on it. But sometimes when you have a small, like, partial rupture, which of course the radiologist just reads it as a partial rupture, there's no difference in what the radiologist says based on, whether it's a really, really bad partial rupture or just a teeny tiny little partial rupture. So if you have a tiny little partial rupture, what I call an interstitial tear, where if you think about a rubber band and there's a tear on the inside of the rubber band, so you could like stretch the rubber band out, hold it up to the light, and see the little tear if you hold it up to the light. But when you're just looking at the surface of the rubber band, you don't see any tear. That's an interstitial tear. Well, that implies you have all this support. You've got, fascia on top and on bottom, all stable, supporting that little tear. And so if you can do some stuff to decrease the stress on the fascia, if you can, supinate your foot a little bit, run on the right side of the road, do some things, stretch the Achilles tendon, do some things to remove the inflammation and get it to improve a lot, then there's a good chance you could actually still run and it could still heal. The key there is that you have to decrease the stress on the plantar fascia enough so that collagen can start to repair itself. So yes, it may help if you sleep more. It may help if you take collagen supplements. It may help if you have copper in your supplements. It may help if you have turmeric to remove inflammation. It may help if you have any of these other things that we know can promote healing, like a really healthy diet. And again, if you don't start changing your diet or taking nutritional supplements or anything else without talking to your doctor, but if you do the right stuff, if you have all of the ingredients in your body that will heal that collagen and help repair it, that moves you a little farther along that continuum of being able to run and still heal. You have to do more of the stuff that's going to help it heal, like supporting the nutrition of the actual collagen in the plantar fascia, making sure you're resting enough, that you're sleeping enough, that you're not too stressed out, that you're hydrating, that your diet has antioxidants and protein so that you can actually heal. But then you have to do less of the stuff that's messing up your healing. It's not really complicated. So, if you supinate your foot, decrease some stress on the plantar fascia, if you hold your foot in a little bit of a corrected position when you run, or use the running surface underneath you to put you in that corrected position, and then you can track your progress using a pain journal, which you can get at docontherun.com. Just go there. You can go to this episode. You can download that pain journal for free. I've made it for runners so that you can basically print it out, and it has everything you need to fill out in there to keep track. And then watch. If your pain's going down and you're continuing to run, there's a really good chance you're going to heal. If your pain is getting worse, if it's swelling more, if it's bruising, well, that's a bad sign. So you're not going to get better if it's continuing to have all these signs of trouble, like more swelling, you have bruising, you have a lot more pain. Obviously, that's a bad sign, and you have to decide then, do you want to keep running and suffering, or do you want to stop running and get it to heal? But running, is not the only thing. It's stress. It's just stress. So when a doctor says stop running, they want to reduce the stress. When they want to put you in a cast, they want to reduce the stress. There is some interim solution for most people. In my mind, even when you need crutches, even when you need a fracture walking boot, there is no one thing that works. So even though I have what I call a standard routine that I teach to doctors, it isn't standard. It's checking you every single week to see, can we stop the boot now? Can we stop the crutches now? Can we get you back to running now? I don't just say this many weeks in a boot and this many weeks on crutches. It's individualized for every single person. Now, there's a way to figure that out on your own, the same way that I tell doctors to figure it out, but it's not complicated. You just have to figure out what's right for you. You have to control all the variables you can control to reduce the stress and speed the healing, and then get back to running as quickly as possible. That's really the key when you have a partial rupture of the plantar fascia. Realize you're not the same as everybody else. You don't necessarily have to stop running. You just have to figure out what's right for you and figure out how important your running goal really is to you. Then impress upon your doctor that that's the goal. Doing this race, getting it to heal by this particular time so you can continue to train and run, that's the goal. Don't take anything less than that from your doctor. So go to your doctor armed with what you know here, and then make a real decision about what's most important to you, how fast you want to get back to running, and what you're willing to do to make that happen. If you can do that, then you can figure out whether or not you should really run with a partial rupture in the plantar fascia right now.
Doc on the Run. We help injured runners run.